Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of favorite live performances, checking out Emily Steinwall with the live performance of the track Hysteria. I don't think I've ever heard of this artist before, so I'm going in with zero context on this. Let's just dive straight into this and see what Emily's bringing to the table today. Very staccato, very light on its feet, kind of creeping though with the darker chords. You've got something to show me. A good amount of width to the vocals too, despite them being airier. They have a lot of presence, especially compared to the drone and the guitar, which are very small. Ooh, got that cross stick on the snare. Interestingly, the treble on the cross stick cuts through just as much as hitting the drum head would. It's not used for a softer sound, it's just used for a sharper one. Interesting production on that. Bass sounds great. I mean, the production on this is incredible already. Nice tapered off vibrato there. Oh, ducking down to like half an octave down. A little bouncy on the drums, being led by the sax here. Alright, drummer, this is nice. Cool harmonic shift there. The rising tension from just what's being played, the amount of sounds, but also the harmonic shifting coming from our soloist here. It's interesting to see this solo evolve, focusing on many of the same foundations from the beginning, but in a totally different way of approaching the same compositional core. The polyrhythms on the drum, dude, just, jeez. Incredibly rapid pulling down of energy. Decrescendo. I think we're at the same tempo though. The placement of the backup vocals is really well. Again, the production on this is so slick. Also, the sliding into notes. So much noise being added here. That was a really intense, finale. I didn't realize that, my eyebrows were aggressive. They were tense until just now. I was like, dude, I need to relax my face. Jeez. Sometimes it's really good to go into something with no context, no expectations, nothing. I was really enjoying the lighter, jazzier, loungier stuff at the beginning. The sax solo was incredibly impressive. I loved how the entire band really supported the solo. Very cool idea. Bringing the vocals back in. I thought we were just returning back to form, dude. we we brought back the main melody, but we did it with the backup vocals here. And I was like, oh, cool. We're getting back to the verse here. Yeah, no, dude, this exploded. This section was bonkers. Um, this whole thing was just so much energy and intensity and anxiety, honestly. And it led into a noise rock solo. There is no point in this song where you could have paused it and said, hey, dude, what do you think's coming next? And I said, I think that guitarist's just going to start making some noise. There is just no way I could have anticipated that at all. And then just to wrap it up, like, yeah, nothing happened, guy. Let's just get back to, the cool vocal harmonies we had a little bit earlier. Let's just chill out and wrap this song up. This is a roller coaster ride, and there's some parts with it I was grooving. There's some parts with it I was just intense, just so locked into the emotional display that I don't even know what I was doing. I don't think I was grooving. I don't think I was like, no body movement. I just think I was tense the whole time, just like a statue. I'm tempted to go back and watch this reaction myself just to see what my face was, my physical reaction to that peak about 6 or 7 minutes into this track. I was locked in, dude. I was in it. Where do I start talking about this? Musicianship, I think that's a good place. Everybody on this track is doing phenomenal. The vocals, excellent. Whether it is the very light, airy sound that's interestingly contrasting the light staccato guitar work at the beginning, or once we bring in this almost wall of sound of ethereal voicings with the layered harmonized vocals in the middle and end of the track, or the higher pitched belting that we had in the peak, the vocals are consistently perfect for the specific section. It is the control over the shape, timbre, and coloring of it all that seems to just perfectly line up and lock into every atmosphere that it's present in. But I think what's even wilder is breath support. Dude, I kind of found this funny because the lighter breathier stuff, now granted, you can certainly use up a lot of your air during these breathier sections because you do have to put out a bit more air than normal in order to get that texture. But I found it funny that this was a very light, quiet section of the song. I haven't taken a breath during any of this. I'm holding all this out. Now, granted, I'm not singing, and I wouldn't say that that was strongly supported either, but it doesn't quite use as much air as belting out like we saw at the peak, and yet the vocalist is holding these notes out for, I don't know, dude, like 10, 15, 20 seconds. It felt like forever at some of these points. And what I found incredibly impressive was there was the one part where they were doing a bit of a lower note and then jumping up, and there was this back and forth. And they had done this like 7 times now, just bouncing back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay, you're gonna have to take a breath soon. And then they hit the higher one and push that even higher and hang on to that for like, I don't know, 5 more bars or something. I was just like, when do you take a breath here? The breath support in general is just ridiculous. And I suppose this extends a little bit into the saxophone area too. But I found the saxophone pacing and phrasing to be a little bit more, still impressive at times, but more conservative in breath support there. And I don't think there was any part during the saxophone solo that I was like, dang, dude, when are you going to breathe here? So I think that's what made it even more impressive is that up to that point, we had listened to like 5 or 6 seconds of this person use, air supported instrumentation, whether it is vocals or an aerophone, the saxophone instrument. And they hadn't really showcased their breath support and their aerobic strength. And they get to this point and they're just belting this note out and just holding it on for so long and little movements in there too. And I don't know, I found that to be incredibly impressive. And I think that just added to the tension of the situation because, again, impressive vocals, incredibly tense, layered section. There's some dissonance being introduced here. And then I'm wondering when this person's going to breathe. It was the cherry on top. It just made that section so tense. Absolutely wonderful from the vocals. The bass early on, I complimented the bass tone, the way it's produced, and there's some really cool bass lines throughout. The bassist generally holds things together at the bottom of the song, but it's never just sitting on pedal tones either, and I really love the bass work going on in here. There's some cool syncopation at times as well, and it's just rock solid jazz bass work. The guitarist, I honestly didn't notice too much throughout the track. Of course, there was the palm muted section at the beginning of the song, that quiet staccato moment. But I think I got swept up in everything else for a majority of this track until I noticed when we got to the peak and the vocalist starts belting that there's a really massive distorted guitar that's just creating this wall around the entire song. And I was just thinking to myself, where did that come from? I've heard a couple of licks here and there, but I was not expecting this gnarly, rock guitar tone to show up in this track. And then, of course, the guitarist gets an entire solo to themselves. And as far as making a solo interesting while using 3 notes, I think they did a pretty good job. Noise rock guitar solos, and in fact, noise rock guitar work in general is not usually my cup of tea. And I did find that it dragged on just a little bit here, but that's definitely a subjective thing. And like I said, I think the guitarist did a pretty good job of keeping it interesting while still kind of just making noise over 3 distinct pitches. And it's still impressive to hear all of the different ways that the guitarist can make noise and scratches and distortion alongside these pitches that they're playing. So yeah, incredible guitar work here. The drummer. What do I have to say about the drummer? I praise the drum work this entire song. The drummer just goes off every single moment. The dude is a beast and has an encyclopedic knowledge of drum patterns and drum fills and ways to mix and match drum ideas. And I swear the dude must have done 80 fills in this 9-minute song. And yet none of them felt stagnant. None of them felt like he repeated a single rhythmic concept to one that he did in the past. It's just the technical work, the melodic drumming, the fills, all of it. It is the kind of drumming I love and the kind of drumming I will praise every moment of every day. And when I hear it, I've got to point it out. Honestly, between the sax and the drum work, if this song was only the 3-minute sax solo, I still think I would have loved every minute of it. That's definitely the highlight for me in this track, and absolutely phenomenal work between the two of them there. It's only elevated because of all the other fantastic choices compositionally and the performances that supported all of that too. So yeah, I mean, just like on a musicianship level, amazing across the board. Everyone in here is incredibly skilled. Everyone has phenomenal chops and is just a joy to listen to, honestly. I think even if this wasn't my jam. And it was a totally different genre of music that I just don't enjoy. I still think I'd enjoy listening to it though, on the sheer fact that these people are playing it. They're just so much skill between them, and I love it. What else? Narrative story, I think, is really interesting. I've kind of talked about the highs and the lows, right? We start the song off soft, slowly build it, move into the sax solo. We got a nice peak here, bring it down a little bit, build that back up, and then just kind of retain this high for the rest of the track before dipping that down and ending on the lower note, kind of where we started, actually. The song is called Hysteria. And I've mentioned multiple times that I have felt anxious and tense throughout this song. And I honestly think that this is all probably on purpose. The idea of hysteria is it's like too much, right? When your emotions are too charged. And honestly, the peaks of this track capture that really well, but something I've mentioned in the past, maybe just once or twice if you've been paying attention to the channel for a while, contrast, dynamics, these are incredibly important. I think that this song works the way that it does because, like a good post-rock song, it builds off of contrast. You have one idea, you have another, you have movement between them. Your softer sections feel soft because you've heard loud, abrasive moments, and your massive, bombastic peaks feel intense and large because you've heard soft. It is pairing something against the opposite of itself that elevates what it is. And I think this song does a fantastic job of that. There's a lot of music that has quieter and heavier sections, but not like this. I mean, on the first fact is that usually when we talk about that, we're talking about some sort of popular music, and it's all compressed down. It sounds quieter, but actually the volume hasn't changed at all. And one section might sound louder, but it's still technically the same volume as that quieter section. This isn't that though. We have quiet sections in this track, and we have loud, bombastic sections too, but it's also the layering, it's the harmonic presence, it's the chord progressions and the melodies that are played on top of those chords that recontextualize the emotional feeling of those chord progressions. It's playing outside of the, coloring outside the lines, playing notes outside of the key that you're in. We see a lot of this during the sax solo, and I think it elevates every time that it comes in. There's so many little elements in play here that help to create a contrasting environment, whether it is rhythmically, layering, density, I guess that's the same thing as layering, volume, harmony, melody. Do we have simple melodies? Do we have complex melodies? It's wild how vast of a gulf this song likes to work within. And like I mentioned earlier, that is the reason why I think it hits as hard as it does. It is about using the contrast to elevate these emotional feelings, to make them feel larger than they are. And thus, like I mentioned, the feeling of intense emotion, hysteria. It is a wonderful ride to be on, although I'll tell you, I started to sweat a little bit. My palms got a little clammy because, like I said, I got locked in, dude. And I was like, I bought into the entire emotionality of this. So not only do I think it works artistically, but it's pretty rare for a song to snap me out of that analytical listening mode and say, no, you're emotionally engaging with this. And this did. And I don't know what I was going to say after that. I enjoy songs that can do that. I feel like my analyses aren't as good then because I'm paying attention to less of the details, but I don't know. Y'all can let me know. Maybe this analysis segment is still interesting and possibly even informative. Now, I think the last thing I want to touch on here is something about the sax solo that really stood out to me. There is this fluidity to the vocal melodies. These sliding into notes, very legato style. It's a very soft movement between notes. In fact, this is slurred pitching. So I gotta go back and read up on that. I don't know if that's technically legato. I think legato requires a soft, usually like a duh sound, da da, a very soft transition between the notes. I don't think slurring is technically legato. Anyways, though, what I'm getting at here is we have this soft movement between pitches. It takes up pretty much every single point of the vocal singing. You start on one note, slide into another. We don't really get a lot of that on the sax at all. In fact, I don't think we get any of that on the sax. But something else really interesting is that the sax isn't too interested in neighboring notes. The sax solo loves to jump between octaves. I think we have jumps of thirds and fifths all over the place. I don't think we have an octave jump in there at all. But it is certainly about moving to, taking these large gaps between notes. And we do see this on the vocals one time during the peak when I had mentioned we were making these large leaps, and then they took that higher note and went even higher while holding out this really long note. But the saxophone does this all of the time up until the midpoint of the song. You see, what the saxophone has done at this point is set up key notes. Notes that kind of define an element of home or centeredness in the melodic writing. It allows the melody to expand. As long as we hit these notes on these beats, it's going to feel like an evolution of what we've been doing. And the saxophonist does this beautifully and almost invisibly. If you go back and listen to the saxophone solo, it starts out rather slow and ramps up, not necessarily in speed because the tempo is consistent, but in the number of notes played per bar. Until we get to a point when the saxophone is pretty much shredding. I think we're working on, it's either 8th or 16th note runs, and it's consistent. It's just one note after another at this consistent speed. It's just really fast. But what's going on here is that we're running up and down these chords. Some skips sometimes, sure, and sometimes we'll run up, come down a little, come back up. There's a little bit of variation to it, but the general idea is we're going to move up one, move it back down, sometimes down a different chord if we have a chord shift beneath it. But when you pay attention to the note at the beginning, the note at the middle, and the note at the end, guess what? It's those key notes. And if you go back and listen to the evolution of this as we speed it up, you'll notice that these key notes are ever present. It allows the song to basically have this pulse, this core, this center that can be expanded from. This is the bass line. What if we put extra notes in between these? What if we put extra notes between those? What if we run this a bit higher than expected? That'll allow us to hit these key notes in a different octave. And it allows the solo to feel consistently familiar despite moving and evolving linearly throughout the song. As it continues to get more and more intense, it's also what makes those, as I mentioned, coloring outside of the lines, bringing in notes from outside of the key more effective. Because we have heard this key many times. We've run up and down it so many times. So when we change some of those notes out, it's not just about the notes being different in the melody. We know what this melody is supposed to feel like. We have felt these key notes. We have felt the passing notes between them that fit within the key. If you remove just one of them and put in a note from outside the key, you're going to notice that even if you're not musically inclined. It creates this feeling of rising intensity, not just through the ever-increasing speed and momentum of what's being played. Not because what we're playing continues to get higher in pitch, but also because we continue to replace more and more notes of what feels familiar with what doesn't. We're not only adding the instability harmonically of these new notes that are clashing just ever so slightly with the rest of the chords that the rest of the band's playing, but it also feels strange to us. That's not the note that's supposed to be there. Maybe you don't know harmonic theory. Maybe you don't even know the names of the pitches, but you know that that wasn't the sound that was there last time. Something in your gut's telling you things have changed. It's subtle, but incredibly effective. It basically uses the solo to not just create an effective linear storytelling device that helps amplify things up to a peak, which the vocals are then going to take and run with to hit one of the most intense moments of the track, but it also trains your ear to pick up on little things like this. And I think that works really well with the concept of hysteria. Even the sheer idea of recognizing that you're being hysterical is sort of what this song seems to not necessarily revel in, but expand upon. It isn't just for the audience member to say, yeah, dude, I kind of see an excess of emotion here. But it's about feeling it yourself. And I think that all of this together, the general writing of it, the chordal work, the melodic ideas, the harmonizing, the fantastic production on this, the general escalation, and the way that the sax solo is written as a way of training the listener to not even, subconsciously, I suppose, pick up on what is normal and notice abnormal elements. It all helps to draw the listener in. And it's what makes this song so effective. Absolutely phenomenal stuff here. Let me see if I can find some lyrics on this. We'll talk about that for a moment. And then we're going to wrap this one up. Well, unfortunately, I couldn't find any lyrics. And I am a bit bummed about that because I do... There's a big part of me that hoped that the lyrics would help support some of what I felt or got out of the music. But there's also some parts in the music that I don't know are necessarily, they don't support my read of this. So I'd love to get just a little bit more insight into what this song might be trying to say, what its intentions are. Instead, however, I suppose I'll just go ahead and plug Emily's latest release, which came out just a few months ago, back in June. It's an EP titled The Portal. There's only 3 tracks on it, but I'm certainly going to be checking it out. This has sold me on Emily's vision as a musician and composer, so I got to dig in more to her works. I guess we're going to wrap this up then. These are my thoughts on Emily Steinwall's Hysteria. What did you think of this track? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you have your own take, opinion, or perspective on this? Put all of that, as well as anything else you'd like to add, down into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, is a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. We're going to check out a full album. And then Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. UTC, we'll have our live stream. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.